Give me, you're tired, you're poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless tempest-tossed, to me. I light my lamp beside the golden door. Written by Emma Lazarus in 1883 as a way to raise money for the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. It's important because it reminds us that immigration has always been a part of American history. But not only is it a part of American history, it's a part of my own family history. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that today, about my family, where they came from, and how their lives have shaped my own understanding of the world. It's important to do. There's a quote above the library, the Norlin Library at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and that quote is, "Who knows only his own generation remains always a child." Understanding and contextualizing the past is a huge task that no one person can do by themselves. But just as the Norlin Library is a gateway to understanding the sum of human experience, our family histories are kind of a gateway to our own personal experiences and our own past. And that's what I want to do today. Talk a little bit about that. So my great-grandfather, Javier, was from Arecibo, Puerto Rico. He was a very talented mathematician, but there was limited opportunity on the island, so he moved to Florida with his two daughters, Eileen and Elaine. He worked for Westinghouse, working on patents, and there he helped develop the toaster oven for commercial sale. And it was also there that he met my great-grandmother, Olympia. They married and moved to the Lower East Side of Manhattan, where my grandfather, Francisco, was born on August 17th, 1937 at Bellevue Hospital. When my grandpa Frank was about 9, the family moved to Maine, where he would go to school with his future wife. When he was 19, he joined the Navy, and he was shipped off to the Suez Canal in the middle of the Suez Crisis on the USS General William Mitchell. After the war, he married Dawn, and they had 7 children together: Pam, Roy, Andy, Frank, Ben, Dawn, Alice, and Katrina. As a family, they traveled across the country quite a bit. It was around that time that my grandpa and his best friend Mike Murphy decided to live off the land. They built basically a little commune together. The kids helped out and they camped out a bunch, and my father told me that it was a very happy time in his life. They spent a lot of time together as a family. My dad got older, he joined the Navy too. And that's where he met my mom. Now, on the other side, my great-grandmother Beulah Bell Cromwell moved from London to Newfoundland. She traveled to America to work as a nurse in Maine, and there she met and married a man named Roy Nickerson. And they had 2 daughters together, Dawn, my grandmother, and Delight. Dawn was an avid reader and a huge fan of Thoreau. And she was very interested in his time on Walden Woods. So when my grandpa had proposed that they live off the grid, she was very receptive to that idea. My great-grandfather, John Kowalowski, was born in Poland in 1907 and immigrated to Scranton, Pennsylvania by way of Ellis Island in 1908. He was only 1 year old. Scranton was coal mining area, and his father had been a coal miner in Poland, so it was a perfect place to move. And him and his brothers all went to school until they were 13 when they dropped out, and they joined their father in the coal mine. They also had a sister named Anna who had contracted polio at the age of 6 months old. And she lived and died in the family home. Worked as a seamstress, and my grandmother told me that she gained a lot of peace and happiness by taking care of her nieces and nephews. That was the role she played. When World War II broke out, all 6 brothers joined different branches of the military. His wife, Rachel Cosentino, was from Naples. Her mother, Loretta, and her father, Thomas, my great-grandparents, had 5 children. Loretta died a few months after giving birth to my great-grandmother, and their father placed them in an orphanage. By all accounts, from my grandmother, Rachel suffered a lot of abuse during this time. Rachel got married to my great-grandfather, John, in 1943. They had 3 children: Scarlett, my grandmother, Loretta, and John. My grandmother Scarlett was also born in Bellevue Hospital, just like my grandfather did, in 1940. She grew up in Manhattan in an apartment, and when she started school, she told me that she suffered a great deal of abuse, but she found joy in music and performing. She even sang at Carnegie Hall. When my grandmother got older, she married my grandfather, Herbert, and they had 3 children. Now, my grandfather Herbert came to America from Nottingshute, Poland, with his parents in 1952. My great-grandfather Stefan was served diligently in the Polish army until the September campaign in 1939, when he was forced to fight for the Third Reich. At that same time, his wife and youngest son Peter were taken from him and put into jail on suspicion of being Jewish. And he used his influence in the army to get them out, basically. I heard stories of him making bootleg moonshine to sell to the Nazis to kind of win favor, curry favor with them, and get his family out. And when they did, they moved to America. They moved a floor beneath my grandmother Scarlett, and that is how Herbert and Scarlett met and fell in love. They got married years later, and they had 3 children, my mom being one of them. And my mom grew up to join the Navy, and that's how she met my father. Almost my entire family are immigrants. I think the only people that didn't immigrate moved from Puerto Rico. And almost all of them were in the armed forces, which I found to be very interesting when I was doing this research. How even though people came from other countries, once they got to America, they were immediately willing to take up arms to support these adopted values of our country. They're the definition of the American spirit. One thing that kind of disappointed me during this process was I didn't hear a lot about the women in the family. You hear a lot about the men because, history is written by men, but I didn't hear much about the experiences of the women in my family, and that was kind of disheartening. So if there's one thing I can maybe take away is that I can maybe work on writing a better history for my own children and my own daughters, so when they grow up, they can tell stories about their mother in a much more rich and fully developed way. Thank you for watching my video, and